survived Black Friday. I saw y'all in the tents out there. But that's about it. Well, today's going to be Red Sunday, and we're gonna close out today's study with words from Jesus on this section of history. And what's important about the next few chapters, this is what relates to us. The prophetic ministry of the prophets. And we've studied all the minor prophets. The longest book is Jeremiah. We're winding that one down. But we've done the Queen Mary with Isaiah, which really covers cover to cover. And what the prophet sees is like you're standing on a mountain, and there's a mountain range. He looks forward, and he tags this event, and he tags that event, tags that in sequential order. But all these events mean something. They're historic. And what history is something happens and then things change. That's a historic event. And so we'll be looking at that and how it relates to us and the prophecies regarding these nations as we track through them. And I know we've done these all before. I know we have. Because, especially in Isaiah, they were all warnings. They were warnings. And the beauty of the Scripture, the beauty of the grace that we're recipients of, the Lord always warns before He disciplines. 100% of the time, He warns. He warns. And as we track through these, you'll see, my goodness, this is 80% like just reading Isaiah. Well, yes, it is. Yes, it is. But at this point in time, the warnings are coming to fruition. And so we'll go through these, and let's just start in, we left off, I think we were lamenting over Baruch and his situation, how he'd been so faithful, and he was so sad because he felt like his life had been wasted. He did everything correctly, and he was out of league with his family and with the princes of Israel and Judah. And then he's captured by the Ammonites and captured by the Babylonians, and now he's hauled off into Egypt, and he and Jeremiah are in Egypt. And Jeremiah is laying out all these prophecies with regard to Egypt. We looked at that last week, and the reason was because Ezekiel was saying everything about 20, 30 years earlier. And he was saying, look, I know exactly what Nebuchadnezzar is going to do. Here's where he's going to go. He's going to sack you, and then he's going to Tyre, and then he's going to Egypt. Well, that's exactly what he's doing. And one of the reasons that the Lord did not want the Hebrews to go to Egypt was because Egypt was under judgment. They're on the list next. And they're going to these cities thinking that they're escaping the wrath of Nebuchadnezzar, and that's exactly where Nebuchadnezzar is going. So it's not going to work for them. Well, it's not working. Hadn't worked for them in quite a while. And so we'll pick up in chapter 47, and we'll go through the Philistines. But we're going to focus today on the prophecies regarding Moab. The Moab history runs from Genesis to Revelation. And what Jesus does at the end, he takes these and he addresses these issues to the church. He addresses this to the church. So we don't want this to happen to us. There are letters to the churches in Revelation, and people say, well, we want to be a New Testament church. I say, well, that's fine. But which one? Which one would you like to be? Because there are some that fell into disfavor with the Lord, and we'll see why that happened and how we can avoid that. All right, now the prophecy against the Philistines, that starts in chapter 47, just tracks Isaiah. And we can say, well, there are two ways to look at it. Well, all he did is just he read Isaiah and just copied it. Well, it's the same spirit. It's the same spirit that's giving these revelations several generations apart. And the difference now is that it's here. It's here, it's come, that the time has come. And so we'll pick up with the Philistines in chapter 47. So the word of the Lord that came to Jeremiah the prophet against the Philistines, before that Pharaoh smote Gaza. So he's giving us the time reference here before he goes on to Gaza. Isn't that interesting? Gaza's on the front page of the newspaper today, right now, tonight. Is the front page of the newspaper, and you've been keeping up with the rockets that have been launched from Gaza. And we'll look at the Gaza question also in our study today. All right, verse 2. Thus saith the Lord, behold, waters rise up out of the north, and shall be an overflowing flood that shall overflow the land, and all that is therein, the city with them that dwell therein. Then the men shall cry, and the inhabitants of the land shall howl. All right, well, so this is Nebuchadnezzar. Now he's coming up through, well, we call it the Gaza Strip, but he's coming through Gaza, and it's going to be like a flood, overflowing the land, the city, and they'll be howling because of his presence. 3, at the noise of the stamping of the roofs of the hoofs of his strong horses, and the rushing of his chariots, and at the rumbling of his wheels, the fathers shall not look back to their children for feebleness of hands. It's going to be so frightful when he comes rumbling through. People will be fleeing. The fathers won't even be looking back at their children to see how they're doing. It's going to be that fearful. Why? For because of the day that cometh to spoil all the Philistines, and to cut off from Tyrus and Zidon every helper that remaineth. For the Lord will spoil the Philistines, the remnant of the country of Captor. Now the Philistines during the time of the Judges, and a little bit during the time of David, they had five princes. And they had this dress that their priests wore. They wore these big fish heads. And so they would meet together in these fish heads, and they had a loose alliance of these 5 princes in Palestine, but the remnant of all of that is going to be knocked out. And notice here, they're not going to be able to get help from Tyre or Zidon. You're not going to get help. Why? Because Tyre's under siege, and Zidon's under siege. And something remarkable about what we looked at last week, and what we'll look at in a little bit today too, was that fall of Tyre. It took Nebuchadnezzar 13 years to sack Tyre. And Tyre it's really 2 cities. There are 2 cities of Tyre. Here's Tyre, and here's Sidon. But probably less than a mile off the coast is an island. Tyre also has an island. So it was really 2 cities in one. And we're going to look at something that's really fun about how that city was sacked. But anyway, right now Jeremiah is saying, don't count on them to come help you, because the Philistines had an alliance with Tyre. And so, well, surely they'll come down and help us. Well, no, they're not coming because they're under siege themselves. But this particular siege of Nebuchadnezzar is the land siege. And there is no record that he crossed into the Mediterranean to get the island. But remember, he was trying to pay off his army. He was trying to pay off his army, and this was the trade route along the coast of what we always called the Fertile Crescent. And the people in Tyre were actually rejoicing at the fall of Jerusalem, because they thought, well, look, now we will be the masters of trade along the region. So this is just speaking to the Tyre that is on land, not to the island. Okay, 5. Baldness has come upon Gaza. Ascalon is cut off with the remnant of their valley. How long will they cut this? O thou sword of the Lord, how long will it be ere they'll be quiet? Put up thyself into thy scabbard and be still. How can it be quiet, seeing that the Lord hath given it a charge against Ascalon and against the seashore? There hath he appointed it. So it's not going to be a time of quiet. It's going to be a time of baldness, of weeping, of mourning. He's coming against Philistia. And Nebuchadnezzar pretty much finishes the job that David started. The newspaper headlines today, you will read about the Palestinians and the land that they're in right now. The current generation that live in Gaza, they're really not Palestinians. Nebuchadnezzar all but extinguished that line. They're really Edomites. I know we've studied that a lot, but they're really Edomites. And Edomites have their own prophecies with regard to what's going to happen to them. But that's coming to the Philistines, and it did. And Nebuchadnezzar just cleared them out. He drove them into the sea. And after that it was quiet. But it wasn't quiet while he was making those raids. Okay, now here's where we're going to focus today on Moab. We're gonna look at Moab. And let's start first with a little history on Moab. Let's go back and let's pick up in... do it in order. We'll go through the prophecies, and we're going to tie these scriptures in. We're going to get this tapestry of history. We'll put it all together. Okay, let's just go through. Okay, the prophecy against Moab. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, woe to Nebo, for it is spoiled. Kiriathaim is confounded and taken. Misgab is confounded and dismayed. There shall be no more praise in Moab. In Heshbon there is devised evil against it. Come and let us cut off from it, being a nation. Also thou shalt be cut down, O madman, the sword shall pursue thee. A voice of crying shall be from Veronium, spoiling and great destruction. Moab is destroyed, her little ones have caused her cry to be heard. And Moab is what we would call the Transjordan, or we would call it Jordan today. It was on the other side of the Jordan River. And there were several tribes of Israel that had settled. Manasseh had settled on the outer bank of Israel. And remember when they got there to the Jordan, they were telling Moses, Moses, you know, we've come a long way. And this land is good enough for us. I know the Lord has promised us Canaan, but we have cattle, and this looks like good cattle country. Can we stay, please? And what we'll do, we promise to help you clear the land. And Moses said, all right, you can stay. And so they got to stay there, but the problem was they were constantly harassed by the Moabites. Just constantly harassed because they didn't have the protection of the Jordan. And the reason the Lord had wanted them to cross the Jordan, because there is that protective barrier that keeps you from being raided. So every time Israel was raided, the Moabites were right there. They went first. So what they thought was a good deal by staying on the wrong side of the river and not going with the full counsel of God turned out to be a disaster for them. They paid for it dearly. And so part of this is to get back at Moab for all the trouble that they've caused the Hebrews, but more because of their culture and because of their God. We don't really study a lot of these cities, but this would mean a lot to Moab with regard to the cities. But he goes through every single city, and every single one is going down. Okay, verse 5. For in the going up of Luhith, continual weeping shall go, for on the going of Veronium the enemies have heard a cry of destruction. Flee, save your lives, and be like the heath in the wilderness. For because thou hast trusted in thy works, and also in thy treasures, thou shalt also be taken. And Chemosh, their God, shall go forth into captivity with his priests and his princes together. Right. So it says like you're going to be like a heath. A heath is just dry desert cactus. It really is not good for anything. But why? Because they trusted in their works and in their treasures. So not only that, your little god, Chemosh, Nebuchadnezzar is going to take that, along with all your priests and all your princes together, they're all going. And the spoiler shall come upon every city, and no city shall escape. Now, you could have ended the passage right there, I suppose. But he goes and names every single city, just to make sure that, I'm talking about, that means you. And the valley also shall perish, and the plain shall be destroyed. The Lord has spoken. Give wings to Moab, that it may flee and get away, for the cities thereof shall be desolate, without any to dwell therein. Cursed be he that doeth the work of the Lord deceitfully. And cursed be he that keepeth back his sword. This is going right back to Genesis. They trusted in their riches, they trusted in their works, and they were doing the Lord's work deceitfully. What were they doing? What were the Moabites doing that was so bad? The Moabites had their god Chemosh, but they also latched into any other god that thought that would do them, serve them well. Remember that at some point the ark was stolen back during the days of Eli, and the ark had been stolen, and the Philistines at that point thought, well, look, if we had the ark, this God certainly will be on our side. But they put the ark in the god with Dagon, and every night Dagon kept falling over. The Moabites were very similar to that. And what they would do, they would go after Yahweh if they thought Yahweh was going to benefit them, but not let go of their god Chemosh. Okay, 11. Moab hath been at ease from his youth, hath settled on his fleas, and hath not emptied from vessel to vessel, neither hath he gone into captivity. Therefore his taste remained in him, and his set has not changed. There had never been this type of judgment brought about in Moab. And by going vessel to vessel, if they've never been taken captive, they've never been taken anywhere else, they've not gone into captivity. But because of that, they never changed. They never reformed. They never repented, because this type of judgment had never come upon them. Verse 12, therefore, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I will send unto him wanderers that shall cause him to wander, and shall empty his vessels, and break their bottles, and Moab shall be ashamed of Chemosh, as the house of Israel was ashamed of Bethel, their confidence. Remember, Bethel, right before this happened, Israel, when they went into apostasy, and before the Assyrians had come and captured them, they set up another cow over at Bethel. They said, well, we've got this league with Egypt. Maybe if we worship their God or burn more incense to the Queen of Heaven, that will help us. Well, it didn't work. And so after they were taken into captivity, Israel was then ashamed of Bethel. Moab, you're going to be ashamed of your God to that same extent. 14, how say ye, we are mighty and strong men for war? Moab is spoiled and gone up out of her cities, and his chosen young men are gone down to the slaughter, said the king, whose name is the Lord of hosts. So this isn't the king of Moab. This is the Lord of hosts speaking. The calamity of Moab is near to come, the affliction hasteneth fast. All ye that are about him bemoan him, and all ye that know his name say, how is the strong staff broken, and the beautiful rod? All the story, all coming down. That daughter that does inhabit Dibon, come down from thy glory and sit in thirst, for the spoiler of Moab shall come upon thee, and he shall destroy thy strongholds. And this is just the league of cities. He goes through all the inhabitant of Ner. Stand by the way, and Espy ask him that fleeth, and her, what escapeth? And say, what is done? What's happening here? Moab is confounded, for it's broken down. Howl and cry ye, and Aaron, Moab is spoiled. The judgment is come upon the plain country, upon Holon, Jesiah, and Methath, and upon Dibon, and Nebo, and Beth-Lehem, and upon Kiriathim, and upon Beth-Gabul, and upon Beth-Meon, Kirath, and Basra, and upon the cities of Moab, far and near. The horn of Moab is cut off, the horn representing power. The arm is broken, the arm representing defense. Okay? No power, no defense. Make ye him drunken, for he magnified himself. All right. Magnified himself, a theme seen all throughout the scripture with regard to Moab. Pride, the sin of pride. He magnified himself against the Lord. Moab also shall wallow in his vomit, and he shall also be in derision. Okay, this is all bad. For was not Israel a derision unto thee? Was he found among these? For since thou spakest of him, thou skippest for joy. They were happy at the fall of Israel. They really were. They were happy at the fall. You were skipping for joy. Okay, well now it's your turn. It's your turn. O ye that dwell in Moab, leave the cities and dwell on the rock, and be like the dove that maketh her nest in the sides of the whole mountain. You've heard the pride of Moab. He's exceedingly proud. His loftiness, his arrogancy, his pride, his haughtiness of his heart. I know his wrath, saith the Lord, but it shall not be so. His lies shall not so affect it. So we're going to be looking at the cultural issues with regard to Moab and what they had done. They were not dissimilar from Rome by taking many gods and rolling them all together. 31, therefore will I howl for Moab, and I will cry out for all Moab. Mine heart shall mourn from the men of Kir-Hereth. And back to Jeremiah, and we see the true heart of a prophet. He's prophesying these things, but it's breaking his heart because he sees the destruction that's coming to Moab. And he's crying for them. Oh, my heart cries for you. O vine of Sibah, I will weep for thee with the whipping of Jazer. Thy plants are gone over the sea. They reach even to the sea of Jazer. The spoiler is fallen upon the summer fruits and upon the vintage. The joy and gladness is taken from the plentiful field. The land of Moab and I have caused the wine to fail from the winepress. None shall trade with shouting. Their shouting shall be no shouting. From the cry of Heshbon to Eliah and into Jahaz, they uttered their voice from Zor to Horaim, and to the heifer of 3 years old. For the waters also of Nimrim shall be desolate. Moreover, I will cause to cease in Moab, saith the Lord, him that offereth in the high places, him that burneth incense to the gods. My heart shall sound for Moab like pipes, and my heart shall sound like pipes for the men of Kir-Hereth, because the riches that he hath gotten are perished. Losing everything. For every head shall be bald, and that's the sign of mourning. Every beard clipped, sign of mourning. Upon all the hands shall be cuttings, and upon his loins sackcloth. And in this particular region of the world, and even today, part of the penance that is done in order to reach pagan gods is to cut yourself and to flail yourself. And that happens on a yearly basis. Many of these Middle Eastern countries thinking that will bring their God to action. And in the great story of Elijah there on Mount Carmel, when he was talking to the prophets of Baal, he was taunting them. I'd say the same thing. Well, why don't you call louder? Maybe he's on vacation. Maybe he's sleeping. And so they started resorting to cutting themselves. Well, surely Baal will see us now. No, not so. So the cutting doesn't help. 38, there shall be lamentation generally upon all the housetops of Moab, and the streets thereof, for I have broken Moab like a vessel, wherein there is no pleasure, saith the Lord. No, how? And how is it broken down? How hath Moab turned back with shame? So shall Moab be in derision and dismaying to all them about him. Thus saith the Lord, behold, he shall fly as an eagle, and shall spread his wings over Moab. That's covering it all. Kiriath is taken, the strongholds are surprised, and the mighty men's heart in Moab at that day shall be as the heart of a woman in her pangs. Moab shall be destroyed from being a people, because he hath magnified himself against the Lord. Fear and the pit and the snare shall be upon thee, O inhabitant of Moab, that saith the Lord. He that fleeth from the fear shall fall into the pit, and he that getteth up out of the pit shall be taken in the snare, for I will bring upon it, even upon Moab, the year of their visitation, saith the Lord, that they fled, stood under the shadow of Heshbon because of the force. But a fire shall come forth out of Heshbon, and a flame from the midst of Sihon, and shall devour the corner of Moab, and the crown of the head of the tumultuous ones. Woe be to thee, O Moab! People of Chemosh perisheth, for thy sons are taken captives, thy daughters captives. Yet, we had 46 verses of judgment. And 47, yet will I bring again the captivity of Moab in the latter days, saith the Lord. Thus far is the judgment of Moab. So these peoples will have a region, with it's the Jordanian region, but they're going to fall into the same trap later on in the future. So let's take a look at Moab. Let's start with Judges 3. Start here, Judges 3:12. And let's look historically. Why this level of judgment? This is pretty severe judgment. Pretty severe judgment. He had spared them up until this point, but no longer. Judges 3:12. Now this is Ehud, when he initially delivered the Israelites from Moab. And the children of Israel did evil again in the sight of the Lord. And the Lord strengthened Eglon, the king of Moab, against Israel, because they had done evil in the sight of the Lord. And he gathered unto him the children of Ammon and Amalek, and went and smote Israel, and possessed the city of palm trees, Jerusalem. So the children of Israel served Eglon, the king of Moab, 18 years. So even at the time of the judges, they were having trouble with the Moabites. The Lord had raised them up in judgment. And we know this story. The king of Eglon is killed by Ehud. He goes and takes him a present. But actually, instead of taking the present, he takes him a dagger instead, and he liberates Israel from the Moabites. But they would have been a constant sword against Israel. And let's look at some other stories here. Let's go to 1 Kings 16. And we're going to touch here, and we won't have time this week, but you can go on Google and bring it next week with regard to Omri, the rest of the acts of Omri, which he did, and his might that he showed. Are they not written in the book of Chronicles, the king of Israel? And then Omri slept. Omri was a king over Israel, and he features very heavily in the Moabite stone, or the Moabite stone. It's a chronicle of Moab. And so during the time of Omri, and Omri was right before Ahab, we still have a lot of Moabite history. So we'll tag into the history next week, and we'll look at the works of Omri right before Ahab. Okay, let's go to 1 Kings 3:5. I'm sorry, 2 Kings 3:5. And this is when Elisha was predicting victory of Moab. Let's see, we'll start verse 4. Mesha, king of Moab, was a sheep master and rendered to the king of Israel 100,000 lambs, 100,000 rams with wool. But it came to pass when Ahab was dead that the king of Moab rebelled against the king of Israel. And King Jehoram went out of Samaria at the same time and numbered all Israel. And he went and said to Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, saying, the king of Moab hath rebelled against me. Wilt thou go with me against Moab into battle? And he said, I will go. I am as thou art, my people as thy people, my horses as my horses. And we know the story of Jehoshaphat. And the story of Jehoshaphat was against the Moabites, and the Moabites were defeated. So we have them in Judges, we have them in the first kingdom, the second kingdom. Now let's go to Genesis, Genesis 19. And let's look at what they were doing there. Genesis 19:30. And this gives us the start of the Moabite kingdom and the Moabite legacy. And we know the story of Lot, and we tell the story of Lot and how his wife was turned into a pillar of salt as she looked back as Sodom and Gomorrah were being destroyed. But that's also the time, right after that happened, is we have the birth of Moab. Let's pick up in Genesis 19:30. And Lot went out of Zoar and dwelt in the mountain, and his 2 daughters with him. And he feared to dwell in Zoar, and he dwelt there in a cave, he and his 2 daughters. And the firstborn said unto the younger, Our father is old, and there is not a man in the earth to come in unto us after the manner of all the earth. So come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve the seed of our father. Well, that really wasn't correct, because Abraham was right down the street. He was right down the street. So this was something that they devised, and they said, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get Daddy drunk. We'll just go in and have some kids, and that way we'll continue the family work. All right. 33. And they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and lay with her father, and he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. And it came to pass on the morrow that the firstborn said to the younger, Behold, I lay yesternight with Dad. Let us make him drink wine this night also, and go thou in and lie with him, that we may preserve the seed of our father. And they made their father drink wine that night also, and his younger arose, and lay with him, and he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. Thus were both the daughters of Lot with child by their father. And the firstborn bare a son, and called his name Moab. The same is the father of the Moabites to this day. And the younger she called bare a son, and his name Ben-Ami. The same is the father of the children of Ammon to this day. So we have the birth of the generations of the Moabites and the Ammonites. And we see them always in league together and always in league against Israel. Well, they're related. Not in a good way, but they're related. And that's how Moab was spawned. That's how Moab is the son of Lot, of all people, from his daughter. And so that starts a trek. And let's go on in Numbers. But immediately they go into apostasy. They go into apostasy immediately. Let's go to Numbers 22.
I do have an objection that they made their father drink wine. I'm thinking he had little to do with it. He didn't put up too much of a fight there.
Well, you know, we make out Lot to be a good guy. But at the beginning, remember, when Abraham, he was giving him a choice. You know, there were 2 lands to take. You know what, Lot? You pick. You pick, and I'll take whatever's left. Lot sort of liked Sodom. He said, you know what? That's a cool place. I think I'll take that. And that's fine, go. So he put himself in that position. He put himself in that situation. He had to live under that high level of sin. He couldn't even have visitors at the house because of what was going on. So, you know, he did choose that, and there was just some of that in it. But yeah, and I agree.
And one of these daughters is the one he offered to the crowd.
I know. Well, and see what's interesting about that is the people that came out, and there was rampant homosexuality there in that city, and it was the old men and the young men. Okay? It was the old men and the young men. And so, that's just a truth. That's just a truth today. We have all kinds of sexual issues, sexual perversion in this country, and it goes from the old to the young. And that's just how wickedness the heart of man is. And anyway, there we go. Have you been seeing what's going on in San Francisco?
I'm taking a towel with me for standing in the public restaurants from now on.
What's going on?
What's going on?
What's going on?
Well,
Naked people are just walking around.
yeah, they just walk around naked.
What?
Because they're protesting that they're only allowed to walk naked during festivals and parades and special events. They want to be able to walk naked all the time.
You go to restaurants like
Yeah.
And going right now, they just walk around.
The restaurants were having to put towels down on the
Oh.
seats so that the next person could.
And so they were just been protesting all week, and it went to the council. Now, it didn't pass because they wanted to be able to walk naked all the time anywhere. They said, no, we have special naked days, walk naked all you want. Those days. But you can't walk naked all the time. Well, the naked vote is only by one vote, really. One vote. So you can still walk naked on certain days, and then, of course, the parades. You can be as naked as you want.
Yeah, like our casual Friday.
So yeah, but this is what was going on in Lot's death. That was the same thing that was going on in Lot's death. The same thing. And Jesus said, look, there are two things I want you to look for. It's going to be just like in the days of Noah, when I had to bring that whole show to an end. You had rampant homosexuality and violence. Those just two are markers. And we look at that today, and we look at things in the paper today and the way things are going, because it's a marker, it's a time marker. It's a time capsule. Jesus said, look for that. Oh, we see it. If you go to San Francisco, you see a lot of it. All right. So be it. Now, we have Numbers 22. Let's look at 1 through 6. Numbers 22, 1. This is the story of Balaam. Okay? And we know this story, but we don't know all the story. We like to tell the story. And Balaam is against who? It's against Moab. Let's just start. And the children of Israel set forward and pitched in the plains of Moab on this side Jordan by Jericho. Okay, remember, the Moabites were on the other side. And Balak, son of Zippor, saw that all Israel had done to the Amorites. And Moab was sore afraid of the people because they were many, and Moab was distressed because the children of Israel. And Moab said unto the elders of Midian, now shall this company lick up all that are round about us, as the ox licketh up the grass of the field. And Balak the son of Zippor was king of the Moabites at that time, and he sent messengers unto Balaam the son of Beor, Pethor, which is by the river of the land of the children of his people, to call them, saying, behold, there is a people come out of Egypt, behold, they cover the face of the earth, and they abide over against us. Now come now, therefore, I pray thee, and curse me this people, for they are too mighty for me. Peradventure I shall prevail, that we may smite them, and that I may drive them out of the land. For I wot not whom thou blessest is blessed, and he whom thou cursest is cursed. Okay, and we know this story. So we have the king of Moab saying that Israelites, they're getting too strong, they're getting too powerful, and this Balaam character, whenever he blesses Israel, they seem to be blessed. And whoever he curses gets cursed. So we're going to pay this guy off. We're going to pay him off. And we're going to tell him, go and curse Israel. And that way we'll be able to deal with them very, very quickly. And so we know what happens. And at first Balaam is sort of resistant. But he keeps throwing out these little lines saying, well, you know, I wouldn't do it. No, I wouldn't do that. Even if my house were filled with gold and silver, I wouldn't do that. He keeps throwing out these financial ideas and to the Moabites. And so Balaam talks a good game. But as you know, the Lord finally says, okay, Balaam, you want to go, go. But he has an angel standing there, and the donkey, the ass, is the only one who knows what's going on. Right? And so the ass says, I'm not going there. And so the ass falls over, and Balaam's hitting him. And they, why aren't you taking me? I need to get there. And so the donkey starts talking to Balaam and says, look, what have I done to you? Every time you have ever asked me to do something, haven't I gotten you there? I take you here, I take you there, I take you there. And why should you be beating me now? And so then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he sees that the angel of the Lord's about to part his hair in a different way. And so he said, oh, okay, I'm so sorry. And so we have this going on with Balaam, and we know how that story ends. But it's that same spirit of Balaam. It's that spirit of compromise. It's that spirit of doing the Lord's work for the wrong reason, of doing the Lord's work, and also saying everything else is okay. And that's really who the Moabites were. They say, okay, well look, we're gonna get this Yahweh dude to come curse Israel. So we'll bring Yahweh in, but they had all their other gods, very, very similar to the Romans. Lots of ways to get to God. And Yahweh is just one of those. It was part of the political system, and it was part of the culture. Well, this is what the warning is about in Deuteronomy 23, and let's look at our warnings. Deuteronomy 23. The Moabites, look at verse 3. An Ammonite or Moabite shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord, even to the 10th generation, shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. Because they met you not with bread and with water in your way, when you came forth out of Egypt, because they hired, look, they hired Balaam, the son of Beor, of Mesopotamia, to curse thee. So the first battle that the Israelites had when they were coming into the land, remember the Ammonites wouldn't let them cross over, or the Moabites. You can't cross. And they attacked them. And the Lord says, look, because of your attitude, because you're against the people of God, and you want to curse the Israelites, I'm trying to bless them, you're trying to curse them. You're not accepting the information. Okay, that's just right there in Deuteronomy. So the Moabites are already on the wrong side of history. And then we just did the story of Balaam. And let's go to the New Testament. Let's look at 2 Peter 2. 2 Peter 2. And we'll see this fleshed out. And what was the problem? And this is regarding false prophets and teachers. So Peter was looking at a last day scenario. And he's saying there are certain signs that you look for in false prophets and teachers. Let's see if any of this is going on today. But there were false prophets also among the people, even as there shall be false teachers among you, who privily shall bring in damnable heresies, even denying the Lord that brought them, and bring upon themselves swift destruction. We have teachers that are teaching heresies, and there's a lot of that going on today, especially in the church that calls itself the Church of Jesus Christ. Because what are we doing? We're doing the very, very same thing. Saying, well, Christianity's good, but all religions, as long as you're sincere, they'll get you there too. There's a lot of that that's going on. But look at this too. And many shall follow their pernicious ways, by reason of whom the way of truth shall be evil spoken. Right? Evil is spoken of the way of truth. There's only one way of truth, right? They speak against it. And look why. Through covetousness shall they with feigned words make merchandise expert, whose judgment now of a long time lingereth not, and their damnation slumbereth not. For God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell and delivered them in the chains of darkness to be reserved in judgment. So false teachers have a judgment that is coming, and then he talks about Sodom and Gomorrah, and then about Lot. And we're going to look at verse 15, which have forsaken the right way and are gone astray, following the way of Balaam, the son of Beor, who loved the wages of unrighteousness, but was rebuked for his iniquity. The dumb ass, speaking with a man's voice, forbade the madness. And so Peter is saying, look, these are the signs. These are the signs. It's called the Balaam, following the ways of Balaam. That compromise. It's just total compromise, just to get along. And also for what? For financial reward. Right? Because that's what Balaam really wanted. He wanted the wages. He wanted to be paid in order to curse, in order to stop that. And then let's go to the words of Jesus. We'll end here, Revelation 2:14. And Jesus addresses this in the letters to the churches. The very, very same way. Revelation 2:14. And let's look at the whole message, verse 12. This is the message to the church at Pergamos. And to the angel of the church at Pergamos, write these things, saith he which hath the sharp sword with two edges. I know thy works, and where thou dwellest, even where Satan's seat is. And thou holdest fast my name, and hast not denied my faith, even in these days wherein Antipas was my faithful martyr, whom was slain among you, where Satan dwelleth. So we're looking at ancient Pergamos in the 1st century, and at that time, that's where the throne of Zeus was, in Pergamos. It also had a throne and a temple that worshipped Caesar Augustus was there. And so with these pagan deities being enthroned in Pergamos, the Lord is saying, yeah, hey, look, this is the seat of Satan. But you're standing fast. I know where you are. I know it's hard. You're standing fast with all this evil around you. But, 14, but I have a few things against you. Because you hast there them that hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel. He things sacrificed to idols, to commit fornication. And so he tells them to repent. Repent from what? The same thing. The doctrine of Balaam, which is the doctrine of compromise, which this church is no longer there. Pergamos is no longer there. It's a tourist attraction now because they ended up in the end compromising. And that's the message to the church today. All the churches are going to get a letter. And we're going to get a letter too, I suppose. And you don't want to be like Pergamos. We're going to say, you know what? We stood by the word and we stood by the truth. And we didn't blend in the truth of Yahweh with any political structure or social structure or any other religious structure, because there's only one way. There's only one way. Balaam is trying to live in two worlds. And so Jesus closes out. Don't have the spirit of Balaam. Don't do that. Don't compromise. All right, well that's the word to the Moabites. So trouble since the beginning, trouble at the end, and the word to the churches, don't do that.